If you do well and you make progress, then the money will come. Or if you got it upside down and you just want to make money, then there's something that's probably off and it's going to break.
How do you build a network, run a profitable business, and make an impact? Oh, and have a personal life at the same time? That's the question, and this podcast is the answer. I'm your host, Chaz Wilson, husband, father of 5, author of the book 5+1, president and co-founder of Master Networks Inc., a national networking organization. Look, each week I bring you successful entrepreneurs who will share success strategies of how to effectively build a network, add valuable wisdom to your journey, and help you succeed. Welcome to Connect, Share, and Prosper.
Welcome to the podcast. We've got a special guest. Go ahead and share that. Announce where you're at too. I've got my, I can see you guys hopping on here, so I can see you there. Thanks, Denise, Ricardo, hopping on the live. So we've got a special guest today. My guest today, Ken Lauher. He is based in New York, former Wall Street broker, currently a feng shui expert, consultant, and coach who works with high-profile clients to restore order to their spaces and their lives. He is nicknamed the Clarifier. I love that. He's America's Premier Feng Shui Consultant. He's been featured on NBC, TLC, HGTV, Los Angeles Times, Inc.com, Bloomberg, The Learning Annex, and so many more. Ken, welcome to Connect, Share, Prosper.
Thanks so much. Thanks so much for having me.
Well, we are super excited. For those watching, we've got a bunch here. We've got Carrie and Gary and Ricardo and Denise and a bunch hopping on right now. You guys are seeing the brand new studio, and Ken, you're our first guest on our brand new Connect, Share, Prosper studio. So
I love it.
The fact that you're a feng shui expert, how does this look? How are we flowing right? Give me some feedback.
Yeah, we're looking really good. I like for me, it's about depth, dimension, and texture. So you got the multiple colors, you got the different angles, and then you just have to review and look at what is the screen and what are people seeing, and is it distracting or is it helping them focus on the content that you want to share?
Love that. So first of all, the Clarifier, that's your nickname. Where'd that come from?
So clients started calling me that. I like it. I wish I would have taken credit for it myself, but the clients, all of a sudden, several of them just started coming up with it on their own, and it all kind of matched with everybody else. So that's how it came about.
So why do they call you the Clarifier? What do you do that helps people?
So a lot of times, regardless of what level you're playing at, most people are just looking for clarity. Because if they can get the clarity that they need, they can understand what are the steps I need to take to actually produce the outcomes. So for me, something that's very natural is I take something that's people have 800 ideas in their head, and then we narrow it down and then start to create, okay, well, what's step 1, step 2, and step 3? And then it really clicks for people, and then they can actually understand, okay, let me do step 1, 2, and 3, and then it tends to work out in a big way for them.
So how do you get clarity? Like in a business, I believe it as well. Clarity's power. What are the first steps I should take to create clarity in my business?
I think there are a couple different ways that you can take the approach. One is you start to ask yourself, and this is sometimes the hardest question I ask my clients is, what do you really want? Because a lot of times they get more obsessed with the tools than the outcomes. And so they have the next shiny object and they're trying to figure out, let me go deep into this tool. And they forget why they're using the tool to begin with. So you have to start to figure out and set your intentions of what do I really want, rather than I read something today, let me go play around in this sandbox, and then tomorrow they're doing something else. The other thing is you have to adjust and understand where you're at that given moment. There are certain times in your life where you've had great success and you could see really far out and you could understand a year, 2 years, 3 years, 5 years ahead. But maybe you've had a life event that created some trauma, drama, and stress. And now all of a sudden, we just have to bring the vision way down to, did you shower? Did you eat today? Did you make some progress today? And so we have to begin to adjust our altitude based on where you're at today. And as you make progress, then the clouds lift and you're able to see further and further out.
Wow, so good. So for those who don't really understand what Feng Shui is, help me understand what it is and why is it important in business?
Great question. So a lot of times the textbook is saying, it translated into the Chinese language of wind and water. To me, that gets a little woo-woo. And for me, coming back from a finance background, my whole approach was, what do we need to do that's going to translate into results and impact a person's life? So for me, it's about understanding what are the patterns, programs, habits, feelings, and emotions that you're picking up from your environment, and that's impacting your subconscious mind. Now, the subconscious represents 86 to 88% of our brain. So we're receiving all of this data and how we feel or how we operate or the energy or lack of energy. And a lot of times we don't have the understanding of what's impacting that or supporting those behaviors that we want to change. And so once we start to kind of peel back the curtain and say, well, hey, if you look at it from this perspective, this means that you're impacting your businesses or you don't have new opportunities coming in or you're not able to convert. And then all of a sudden people were like, well, of course I want to convert more, so I'm going to change it. And then that's when the ripple effect happens.
So how do you help people identify those patterns or programs that they need to shift and change those? And so like, is there something I could do? Obviously, I know I could talk to you and you could help me figure that out. But on my own, are there tools or things you could give me that I could say, okay, let me look at what I'm doing right now to adjust the patterns and programs that I do that impact that subconscious mind?
I think the simplest and easiest thing is literally pick up your phone and take a picture. And take a picture of, standing in each corner of the room and take a photo. The moment that you take a photo is the moment that you change your perspective and you see it through a different lens. And then all of a sudden you're like, well, of course, I don't like that. I don't want this. I showed somebody this morning, actually, they're trying to sell a home. And they didn't even look at the pictures that's posted for selling the home. And I said, well, look, this light socket, there's no plate on that. There's dirty clothes on here on the laundry machine, all of these different things. And so once they looked at the picture, they're like, I got it. But before that, they weren't even paying attention to it because they didn't have the time or the energy or didn't even want to address it. But when I start talking about, hey, it's going to impact thousands and thousands of dollars, then all of a sudden people will wake up.
Yeah, so crazy when somebody's, again, and I understand the feng shui in the real estate space and particularly the real estate business because you're selling a product that flow very much has to do with. So again, from the business side, I can, getting clear obviously gives me power and direction and so forth. And so, okay, I can take a photo, what of my office space maybe? Would that be helpful? If I went in my office right now and I start taking photos, that gives me some clarity as to maybe how things are set up and how I'm doing that. And maybe there's too much clutter or what, give me some direction there.
Yeah, so I'll give you an example because, I work with everybody from literally somebody that's unemployed or lost their job and trying to figure out how to get a job to, the hedge fund manager that's trying to figure out how do I bring in a couple extra $1 billion for money under management. Okay. And so a lot of times there's conflict happening and they don't quite know why, or there's just not enough opportunities. They feel like they're swimming upriver. And so every space represents a season being spring, summer, winter, fall. All too often when people are experiencing disruptions or challenges in their life, their spaces mimic winter or fall, meaning that everything's dried, everything's dead, there's no life energy, and people lose connection with nature. And so how does that relate then into business? Well, it means that you're not making those couple extra calls, you're not sending those couple extra emails, or your vibration and your frequency is off. And that makes you less attractive personally and professionally. For me, it's kind of like you've all been in that experience where you kind of get that glow and you can make a phone call or something and then boom, it's easy. But when you're disrupted, your energy contracts and you can grind on that phone all you want to try to convert the sale and it just won't happen. And so for me, it's a simple recipe. We have to raise your vibration and your frequency. And so when I look at it, an office space, I look at the first thing for an office space is what's happening underneath your desk. If a person's stuck, a lot of times they have blockages underneath their desk. So that's step one. And then step two is, are there any living plants? What does the energy feel like? And then how does that translate into making you feel good so that you can go from a thought to an action to a result and then repeat that? Most people have a lot of thoughts, very little action, and then they never get the result.
And to improve where I'm at, I would never think, hey, let's go look under my desk, see what's there, or how many living plants are in my office that, help create connection to nature and improve energy. I mean, I totally am behind on the energy piece. I think I may give a bunch of examples of where, somebody with low energy doesn't get the sale. Somebody with high energy, they attract more business. They attract the right people to them. And so I get that. I can see it even we just did events last week, five days of events, and how the room is set up, where the aisles are, where the cameras, the lights, the banners, everything where's the projector and all that stuff creates a balance to the room. It creates an energy to the room. When we first started those, we were not good at that. I'm going to admit. We just put, desks and chairs in there, but I can see what you're saying. And so, I think that's a hugely helpful tip. I would never think to go, all right, let's go look at the office space and is that creating a space of energy for me? Or is it sucking energy from me? I'm sure there's truth to that too. So how did you make the jump from finances to feng shui? I'm curious about that.
Yeah, so for me, I helped build this brokerage firm up from 7 people to 300 people, and then started to found another brokerage firm. And then all of a sudden, I started paying attention to the hours I was working. And at that time, I was like, you either have a lot of money or you have a lot of time, but never do you have both.
Right.
And so for me, I started for the first time paying attention to the number of hours I was working, nonstop. And then I was getting ulcers, I was getting stressed, like all of this. And I was like, that's a clue. Something's out of alignment and it's not working anymore. And it kind of, when you build up to 300 plus, then it becomes a different entity by itself to begin with. And that was all in one shop. It wasn't like they were all over the place. That was under one roof. And so for me, it was time for change. And at that time, I was really interested in technology and how to harness the internet and things like that. So I went off and created business plans and then did some other things. But the trigger that happened to me was I was mugged at gunpoint.
Oh, wow.
And so somebody stuck a gun in my face. And then the moment that happened was the moment where I had extreme anxiety afterwards and things like that. And I was telecommuting in my apartment. So I'd be in my apartment and I felt like, hey, if I go outside, somebody's going to take my lunch money type syndrome. And then I'm like, well, if I'm spending so much time in my apartment, it's time to figure out and understand how can I balance it to support my energy rather than fear, self-doubt, and anxiety. How do I get back my confidence and my certainty? And so I'd read one article, it'd tell me to do one thing. I'd read another article, it'd tell me to do the exact opposite. So instead of helping me with that confidence and certainty, it actually made me more frustrated and angry. And so I took 3 years in a master's training program to truly learn it, but learn it from a place of not just feeling better, but how do we translate it into getting results, i.e. making a bigger impact in our professional life. Although people want to make more money, that's not necessarily the true root of it. If you do well and you make progress, then the money will come. Or if you got it upside down and you just want to make money, then there's something that's probably off and it's going to break.
Okay, so I gotta ask you this question. So first of all, everyone listening, we're listening to Ken Lauher on Connect, Share, Prosper. You shared something really powerful, and I don't want this to get missed. So was it 3 years ago when you got mugged?
No, it's been over a decade now.
Okay. I'm sure it still feels like yesterday, though, in many ways, right? Those things are traumatic, and you said traumatic and dramatic and stress, and it probably did all 3 of those in your life. And so you start to look for ways to balance that. And I want to ask you a question, and it has to do with what I just trained our folks this last week. And I had taught them about making shifts in their business. And so you just said you spent 3 years, right? 3 years. Were you still doing the finance at the same time, or were you all in on learning this?
No, I was doing some other things at the time, so I wasn't totally 100% dedicated, but that was the training process, was a 3-year training program.
Well, and so here's the point I wanted to make, and I want to give you a lot of credit for that, because I think a lot of people say, I'm going to make a shift, and they think it's going to be like this overnight thing, and they're not going to put a ton of effort into it, and they're going to jump, right? The grass is always greener on the other side, so they're like, hey, I'm going to jump over to this, and you spent 3 years mastering a craft, and then this is where I want to get to. And you've got this title on here, and this goes into the training I just did with other people last week, America's Premier Feng Shui Consultant, right?
Right.
So who gives you that title? Who gives you the title after this traumatic experience? You then get into training and mastery of this. Who gives you that title? Is that the title somebody gave you, or did you assume that title? Did you jump into that as in a space where there was a void? How'd that happen?
Yeah, Well, the reality is, out of all the Feng Shui consultants out there, people get really excited. Only 3 to 5% of all the Feng Shui consultants that train or study or try to help people can actually make a full-time living out of it.
Right.
And so there's very few people that are actually out there producing content, sharing, and truly making a difference. And a lot of the other consultants out there are in Asia and Singapore and things like that, but there wasn't at the time. And even now there are some, but they're not really elevated. And so what started happening was my clients would come to me and be like, I could go to this local person who read some books, or I can work with you regardless of where you are. I'm going to get the better result working with you, even though that I can't see you face to face. And some people fly me around the world and stuff like that. And so that was the natural evolution of how that started to come about.
So good. And so for you listening, and we got some great people on here. And if you guys have questions, make sure you put them in the comments here, and I'll be sure to ask Ken. Here's my point: is I think people want to be these generalists in their business, and I think what I love about what you did is you said, look, there's a void, there's a space here. I know this, I've mastered this, my craft, and I'm just going to assume that role, and then all the work I do continues to validate that. And I'm trying to encourage the people listening to do that in their space, to master it, do something of value of success, and then assume a role of an expert or a specialist in that space, so that people seek you out for that. Speaking of seeking, go ahead and make a comment. I could tell you were going to make.
Yeah, that's right. So a lot of times, even Feng Shui consultants come to me for help. And they're really good at helping others, but they can't get the same results for themselves. And that's because we as humans can't see our own blind spots.
So true.
Whether you're looking for a coach or a mentor or guidance or with your business or networking, all of these different things, and that's where the resources, the tools, and all of these things start to come into play. The other thing that happens is people are operating from fear, self-doubt, and anxiety. So they have this smorgasbord process of like, hey, I can provide these 50 different things, so let me post those all over my website. And as a result, no one takes you seriously because you're the master of none.
So true. So I guess if I was struggling in business right now, I'm not sure I'm waking up thinking, man, I need help in Feng Shui. Like, that's maybe not somebody's first response. So how are you getting your message out there? And for those listening who have sort of unique businesses where, people aren't waking up going, oh, I need, if you're going to sell your house, hey, I need a real estate agent. If you need insurance, you need an insurance agent. But somebody who doesn't know that that's what they need, how do you get this? How do you get awareness to what you're doing so that people go, you're the guy I should be talking to?
Well, there's 5 core things that people are looking for when they're looking for help or assistance. Number 1 is they want to make a bigger impact in their professional life, i.e. part of that is they want to make more money. Number 2 is they want to find love or improve an existing relationship. The third is they want to feel stronger and more confident in their body. Now, if that's lose those couple extra pounds or get stronger or things like that, that's what starts to happen there. And then number 4 is typically people would like to travel more. And then 5 is they all want more freedom and flexibility. Now, all those things ramp into being happier. But it's hard to measure happiness. You know it when you experience it, but it's hard to measure it. So for me, one of the keys to happiness is progress. And so we can start to measure progress in your business or your personal life or your professional life. And a lot of times when people are frustrated, it's because they're not satisfied with the current levels of progress that they're experiencing. And so we can look at and start to talk about, hey, you're not satisfied with your business because there's some disruptions, or you're not getting the clarity, or you don't have the focus. Or like I had a client just this past week, and she was all over the place doing all these things, but they weren't producing. And so for me, there's kind of a simple process, and it's PFD: probe, fold, or double down. And for business owners, this is huge. Probe means test it. Like if you have a thought or an idea, test it. If there's a lot of friction, fold. But if it's working, then you have to ask yourself, how can I double, triple, or quadruple down on that?
So good.
And most people don't, they test, but they don't fold or they don't double down. And so they leave huge opportunities on the table.
So let me just recap that because I know on my end there was a little bit of a glitch on the internet speed coming in. So what I heard you say is the three are probe, fold, and double down, correct?
That's right.
Okay, so in my business, I need to probe to find out more. If it's not working, I'm going to fold and be done with that, right? And if it is working, it's time to double down.
That's right.
I love that. And so I loved the 5 core principles there too. And I think you're right. That's what people are looking for. And I think sometimes that lack of happiness comes from this gap between their potential to where they're achieving, right? And they say, God, I know I could do more. I mean, we just had this leadership conference and a mastermind, and I had several people saying that, like, I feel like I could do more. And that's where that anxiety and lack of happiness can come in, is when I know I can do more and I'm not progressing towards those goals.
Well, here's another concept that I want to throw on top of this.
Yeah.
Once you gain momentum and somebody's doing well, then and what I mean by that is you're able to complete the link of going from a thought to an action to a result. So you're completing that cycle and you're repeating that over and over again, because the moment that you start to think about it is the moment that you're manifesting it now.
So good.
And once you start to manifest, then we start to define, well, if we're going to manifest some stuff, let's actually define it. But a lot of times what happens is people are operating from that fear, self-doubt, and anxiety, and so they stop before they start. And so a lot of times what I describe to them in Feng Shui terms is you got to follow the chi. Meaning if something's coming to you, just take the next simple step. It doesn't mean you have to say yes. It just means get out of your own way and take the next simple step. And I've seen people exponentially grow their businesses or their opportunities just getting out of their own way and taking that next simple step. Because a lot of times people are like, oh, I already know what's going to happen. I already know what they're going to say. And I'm like, the reality is you don't.
Right. We're often the thing that we have to get out of the way in our own business and in our own life. We're the stumbling block because we overthink, we get in the way, we want to do different things, and letting it happen and manifesting and going after it and making it happen. So really great points. A lot of great thoughts here on this episode of Connect, Share, Prosper. Ken, I want to ask you a couple of last questions here. And guys, if you have any questions for Ken, make sure you drop those in here. A lot of hearts and thumbs up, but not a lot of questions, and that's okay. Maybe it's a topic they want to. So how can they find you if they want to learn more about you?
That's great. Yeah. So the best thing is go to kenlauher.com, KenLauher.com. That's my website. You can find me, Ken Lauher, on Facebook. Same thing for Instagram, Twitter, and things like that. And we're highly engaged on Facebook and sharing content throughout the day, and a variety of different things that all help a person get back to unlocking breakthroughs in their personal and their professional life.
Well, let's talk about that for a second. So what would our audience is a lot of entrepreneurs who are networking and connecting with others. What's a tip you would give that either you've used or you found to be very successful in helping them connect with other individuals?
For me, it's about just have a conversation. All too often, people put so much weight into what they're angling, trying to get the words right. And here's the recipe, and this is the recipe that I've been using for the last decade in how I help people. For me, Feng Shui is just a tool. It's a tool to help you get connected to your true self. When you're connected to your true self and you cut out all the nonsense and the gobbledygook and the terminology, that's where you're strongest. And that's where your vibration and frequency rises, and that's where you become more attractive personally and professionally. So if you're networking or something's coming to you, just take the next simple step and have a conversation. It doesn't mean that you're selling them. Yeah. And then for me, it's about, facts tell, stories sell. So maybe you share a story and then all of a sudden people are raising their hand and being like, I want that. Or they're like, I can relate to that. That makes a lot of sense.
Well, it couldn't have been more true than even in this episode. I mean, the moment you shared about you being mugged and how that transitioned everything for you, that pivotal moment in your life, it's like the energy of the interview changes, right? Because all of a sudden you're sharing something personal, traumatic, dramatic, and stressful in your life, and everything shifts. We could talk all the facts about Feng Shui and all the other things and all the tactical pieces, but it's the moment you told that story that there's a connection that's different, right?
That's right.
Such a powerful tool.
And for me, a lot of times when people are having challenges, we can trace it back to some life event. Something that has happened in their life, whether it's relationship issue or financial issue or something like that. And then what happens is other life events start to stack on top of that. And so for me, step one in that process is, what do I need to do to get my spark back? What do I need to do to get my mojo back? And just taking the next simple step. Now, step two then is, once you've got your spark back, what do you need to do to get into daily power? Because we don't want to be the person that went to some motivational seminar all hopped up for the weekend and then come home and crash and be like, well, that was great, but here I am again. Once you build in a daily power, and you're a good example of this because you're sharing it on your social media of, hey, did you sweat today? Did you work out today? Like, that is something that you can sustain over time that gets your blood going and you get into power, so you show up differently in your personal and your professional life. So we start to have to look at the patterns, the programs, and your habits and how that's supporting where you want to get to. And then we start to define, okay, if I got my mojo back, now I'm in the daily power, then what am I going to create and produce?
So, I mean, so true. I find so many successful people are very disciplined in daily habits. Their daily method of their operations is very regimented, very systematic, very on point and on purpose every single day to create that energy and build from that. And, you know, what's the secret? Well, it's a lot of consistency of these daily habits that get them into action. So I'm going to shift gears a little bit on you here that I ask a lot of our guests. So what's next on the horizon for you? What's big in your world? What are you working on? How could our audience help you achieve the things you're trying to accomplish?
Yeah, so for me, it's about, helping others really gain awareness into what's happening and how is it limiting. So for me, all of a sudden now I'm doing the podcast. Here I have the opportunity to share this information with you and your community. And then we're doing, a lot of more video and doing shows and all of these different things, because for me at this time, there's a secret recipe, and it's very simple. Yeah. And again, it's just a tool. So for me, it's about how can I make a bigger impact, and at the same time, I have to focus on what do I need to do to raise my vibration and frequency so that I can be of better service to others second. Most people focus on everybody else when they start to get into something, and then they don't have any oxygen. They're blacking out, and they're like, "Yeah, but I got to do it," but they don't take time for themselves. So for me, it's about making sure. For me, I just literally came back from the Catskill Mountains. I was, playing around a stream yesterday and talking to somebody that was building a house this morning, and that rejuvenates me. It gets me excited, so I can come back here and truly be present for everyone and begin to expand and truly help people. And again, Feng Shui is just a tool. It's a tool to help you get back to your true self, because when that happens, the world opens up to you, and then you can focus on what you're creating and you're producing.
Guys, we've been blessed today to hear from Ken Lauher. He is giving us some great wisdom of how to get our energy correct, how to focus to get clarity. The 5 core principles, I loved those. I'll recap those for those if you just got on. It's those want to make an impact, which ultimately is making more money, improve love and relationships, stronger in our bodies. We want to travel, and then ultimately have freedom. And the way to do that is to get that better balance in all areas of your life. And the man that can help you with that is Ken Lauher. Hit him up on his website, social media, follow him, reach out to him. I'm going to end with this last question. It was a question that Tim Story asked me on his podcast when I was on his podcast, and he said, when is the time in business you've been the most proud of an accomplishment that you've had? This is the time to brag about something that you've done, accomplished, where you're like, man, I'm super proud of that thing, that accomplishment.
I've been blessed to have a lot of different things and a lot of different stories, and all of them are impactful. I think the one that comes to mind is I had a long-term client, and her husband was just an amazing person, incredibly successful in business, an athlete, and then all of a sudden he got sick. A week later, he's no longer walking around. He passed away.
Wow.
And so here's this woman who is strong and capable and all of that, but now she has 2 children in high school, and then one of the children start acting up, and he came from an influential and powerful kind of family with means and things like that, and started to go down the wrong path, and then quickly deteriorated. And so I went all in and brought in other people and help. And for me, probably one of the most proud moments was getting to go to that kid's graduation. And now seeing how he's blossoming and how he's growing and how he's turning into, his passions into purpose and things like that. So probably attending his graduation, because if we hadn't stepped in, he wouldn't have graduated, and we don't know what that outcome or that story would have looked like as a result. And so that's probably one that I'm most proud of.
So powerful. Thank you for sharing that with our audience today. Guys, we've been blessed again to be with Ken Lauher on Connect, Share, Prosper. Make sure you follow him, hit him up on social media, connect with him. Listen, we every single Monday I bring to you special guests like Ken on this episode or on these episodes to share wisdom, practical advice on how to be successful in life and business and to grow, to make more connections, to share that impact with others and to prosper. We'll see you next Monday on Connect, Share, Prosper. Be well, everybody.